Now, we're going to see how we can use access tokens obtained from OpenID Connect that we saw in an earlier module, how we can use those to update the resource access through a gateway. In this case, we're going to use Stack and Amazon Web Services. So we're using an API gateway with an authorizer written in a Lambda function that's loaded here to validate the access token and generates a policy which the API gateway can cache for current and future requests to expose to our services, which could be used with AWS Lambda functions or any other endpoint, such as a microservice, for example. And we're going to set up this Lambda function and see how it works with a JSON Web Token, or a JOT as it's often called. And basically, the advantage of using a JSON Web Token is that it contains information of the authenticated user that we can then take and pass through with the request to our backend services via headers or an input mapping template. So that's why we're using JOT, but with Modyo, we could also, for example, use a hidden access token as well. And so now with all that, let me just get here and we're going to start a session in our site. With our user, Joe Blogs. And we can obtain our user's access token through the API. And in the way that we're using Keycloak here, we have a JSON Web Token, which we can decode in jot.io. Here, we can see that the JSON Web Token contains information such as the token expiration and also some user data. So in Keycloak, this data can be configured as parameters or user attributes that then can go into the incorporated settings in this JSON Web Token. So now with that done, let's see how this works with the API gateway. So here in the API gateway, we have a minimal API. It's defined very simply. We just have one credit card's method request that responds with a Lambda function that later we will show the details of what this step contains. And we have mock data with a JSON object including credit card information of the user. And we have a movement service for our credit cards here that also has some mock data. So this mock, we can see right here, we can see the response. It's just a JSON object that we're going to use later. The case of the Lambda function with the credit card is the function getCreditCards that we have here in our Lambda console. And also we have a mock function that completes our user data in the credit card. We can review this in Postman to see what gets returned to us from our endpoints. So here, we can see the return of the endpoint, credit cards, and the return of the endpoint, movements. Okay, so now, these endpoints are completely public for anyone to access and obtain this information. In this case, we're using a mock data. It's always going to be the same, so there's not really a problem with accessing it. But now, the interesting part is how can we authorize access to this resource, and how can we contextualize this resource for specific users?